My movie is the worst piece of crap I've ever seen in my entire life.
Hey folks, I like movies. I like good movies, I like bad movies, I like polarizing movies. Really, the only thing that I ask of my movies is that I not feel like I've wasted my time once they're over. Does it feel like my voice got like high? Good God. Oh, it totally got higher. What the hell was that? For me, this was a pretty good year on the cinema front, mostly just because I took special care to avoid movies that I wasn't going to want to see. I told myself I was going to want to see Indiana Jones 5, and then when that time came around, I realized I absolutely did not want to spend money seeing that film, and so I just didn't do it. I liked Godzilla Minus One because it was a really strong character drama that made, I think, perfect use, honestly, of its sci-fi premise, which is, I think, really easy thing to mess up with a giant CGI lizard movie for some reason. I like Barbie because it was funny, it was artistically distinct, it was something that inspired a lot of conversation and discussion between friends of mine, even when it was negative towards the movie. Like it was worthwhile just in the interactions that it inspired in me and my friend group. And it's no secret that I liked the FNAF movie because it was just so off the wall, stupid, and ridiculous that I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. And honestly, isn't that just a lovely time? When the theocratic, anti-free speech hate network, The Daily Wire, announced that they were going to be making a movie about trans people in sports, I was so certain that it was going to be the third kind of movie, that it was going to be something that I could enjoy for free, of course, in the same way that I enjoy Cool Cat Saves the Kids, or Troll 2, or FNAF. I've, for a while, been meaning to get around to seeing 2025, A World Enslaved by a Virus, which is like a conservative, dramatic take on the pandemic a la 1984, a film with the description, and I'm not joking, it's 2025. The world as we have known in 2020 does not exist anymore. The virus changed the world and communism is all over the place. A global world language developed. Meetings are illegal, traveling is illegal, and Christianity is illegal. A group of Christians is trying to fight back. My desperate hope was that Lady Ballers was going to make me feel the way that that description made me feel. That is to say, delightful. But of course we can't have nice things in this country, and so Lesbian Bisexual turned out to be just the worst film experience. I initially figured that at least I could get a little bit of content out of it just by kind of taking you through the plot and dissecting how ridiculous and nonsensical that it is. But the problem is that I already did that in this video, because you can glean the entire plot from the title of the movie. It's gonna be some guys, they're gonna pretend to be women to win at women's sports, then a bunch of other people are gonna start doing it and they're gonna learn their lesson. That's it. The Daily Wire has tried to front this film as one of those brave, controversial comedies that is going to be polarizing, it's going to be offensive, and it's going to lead you to some interesting conclusions. You know, they really think that they're like the next George Carlin, it seems. Or I actually don't think that they think that. I think they know that they're not. But nonetheless, they want you to think that they think that. But the problem is that they are absolutely allergic to making interesting or creative artistic decisions. Everything that I'm going to talk about in this video is stuff that I have read some interesting insight into, because really none of these people have a clue what they're doing because none of them care about what they're doing. But as I said, some of the decisions that they made, boring as they might be in a vacuum, I think do give kind of an interesting, I guess, insight into some of these freaks' mindsets. So, you know, it's worth talking about. This is a terrible movie, and I have been sitting on this script for, like, weeks. Yeah, weeks now, because I didn't know, like, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to think about it anymore. But you know what? I went to all this effort to write a script. I had some stuff to say about it. Fuck it, let's get this over with. So, on a moment-to-moment level, how does Lady Ballers tackle the issue of trans women in sports? The answer to that question is with more incest than you might expect. Also, apologies if I forget or like make a minor mistake on some of the characters' names. I cannot be bothered to IMDb them. Lady Ballers follows Weird Freak, played by Jeremy Boring, who's a washed-up former basketball coach who's desperate to revitalize his career and win back his wife, who's now dating this gender nonconformist hippie played by Matt Walsh. So he takes up a job at a drag bar where he runs into one of his former basketball players and realizes they concoct this plan to get the whole team back together and win a women's basketball competition. And then the rest of the movie is basically just them recruiting the old team and winning at a bunch of women's sports. And then it's like interspersed with media interviews and some tragically misplaced sentimental character moments, I guess. Boring, who aside from playing Weird Freak also directed the film, extracts legitimately heinous performances from his actors, and not really the fun kind of heinous like Neil Breen or Brendan Steer.
I'm gonna shoot this damn car up full of holes!
No, no, no! No. No!
No, acting like that would be actually kind of fun to watch. So instead we're treated to two kinds of performance. Either A, hideously unconvincing dialogue.
Don't you see? Men are faster, stronger, meaner. The entire reason we created women's sports was to keep you out.
Or just kind of weird yelling.
What was that badger humping?
You know how critics of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia oftentimes kind of point to the fact that the characters yell at each other a lot as kind of a reason why the show is really stupid? And then you watch it and you realize the yelling scenes are honestly some of the best in the show, just because there's so much like interesting, funny dialogue interspersed in there if you're paying attention. And also because each character is super distinct, especially in the later seasons, to the point where like you can pick them out of all of the scenes. And so like I live for the voice that Charlie Day does right before he's about to start yelling in a dialogue scene in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because it's so fun and so ridiculous. But this film has none of that kind of charm, and all of the yelling is just obnoxious and insufferable and makes me want to die. To be as absolutely fair as I can possibly be, and this film and the people making it don't deserve it, here is what I would consider to be the best joke in the film.
What's that?
This is the fourth time.
It's the obedience trap, lady. I can't hear anything through it.
This is the fourth time.
Please note that I didn't call it a great joke, but compared to its company, that's fucking Who's on First. Conservative jokes are at a bit of a disadvantage just because of the fact that they're predicated on misunderstanding basic facts about the world. It's just kind of like hard to laugh at a joke told by a person who has no clue what they're talking about. You oftentimes just find yourself thinking, you goddamn idiot. If you're a conservative and you don't appreciate that characterization, or you don't believe me, go watch a liberal stand-up show about gun control or assault weapons, and then come back to me and tell me that you found it funny. But even so, giving this joke the benefit of the doubt and assuming that it's not predicated on really, really stupid misunderstandings, I think it's kind of funny. It's the kind of exaggeration and like charm that if this whole movie were made up of jokes like that, I would be like, you know what? It's stupid. It's really dumb. But like it's conservative art, you know, like it's a genuine, interesting expression of their ideas, at least. But no, this is as close as we get to that. Besides this, most of our alleged humor comes from our what I legally have to call protagonists acting girly or beating up women. There's this absolutely god-awful running gag where our main basketballer has a purse and he keeps referring to it as a merce. And that's the entire joke, and it was so clever that they have to repeat it at least 3 fucking times.
Is that a purse? It's a purse. Is that a purse? Dude, that's not a purse. This is a purse, bro!
Is this purgatory? Am I dead? Sorry, I realized I totally teased you with this and never actually recorded myself talking about it. There's this running joke where there are these 2 characters that are twins, but they have different fathers, and it's funny because women are harlots. But the joke culminates in the 2 brothers having an accidental threesome together and getting a woman pregnant with twins, and now both of them are the father, and it just made me ask, like, who is this for?
Monica from the Hawkettes. Played a little one-on-one with her last night, shirts and skin style. Kept me up like half the night.
What?
Monica kept me up half the night.
Which half?
Jake, Blaine,
Hey, Monica. Hey.
there's something I have to tell you both. I'm pregnant.
Who's the father?
Both of you.
I read a review somewhere or a comment from a fan of the Daily Wire who was like, I love the movie, love your message. It makes me really sad that I can't show it to my friends because of all of the sex stuff. And like, yeah, who enjoys this? So it's not funny and it doesn't have a good plot. But a comedy doesn't need those things to still be a good movie. And I know how that sounds, but I'm really trying to be charitable. And I think a film can at least be passable if it has interesting characters. And to me, this is where the filmmaking goes from bad, stupid, whatever, to legitimately egregious. Put simply, this film doesn't have characters. I'm sure it has actors with fictional names saying lines that were written for them. But the Daily Wire legitimately just seems completely unaware of, I guess, the concept of characters having traits. The most explicit example of this is BDSM reporter lady, who shows up really early in the film to team up with Weird Freak. And your immediate introduction to her is her going on this out of nowhere rant slash like monologue about how anybody who hasn't had a period can't be a real woman. And so you're directed to think, oh, she's going to be the conservative voice of reason. She mocks Weird Freak for being a weird freak, and then immediately asks to be let in on their scam. And then 12 seconds after that, they appear to have sex. And so, like, I guess now you're supposed to think that she's like a commentary on journalists and how, like, they know that they're lying. They don't believe the things they're saying, but they say it anyway. Which really, it doesn't make sense why she's having sex with this guy that she claims to be disgusted by. I think is just kind of a mashup, a mix-up of metaphors there. But whatever, fine. And then later in the movie, she goes on this apropos of nothing monologue about the evils of divorce and how our main character should be ashamed of himself for his actions and the way that he treated his family. And you're just left wondering, like, what was the point of this character? Like, what did any of it mean?
Of course your divorce is affecting your daughter. 70% of all people in prison come from broken families. She's twice as likely to do drugs, twice as likely to drop out of school, 4 times as likely to have trouble fitting in. Do you people not even do a freaking Google search before you decide to blow up the planet your kids live on? Breeders.
This character just kind of says whatever Jeremy wants her to say at any given time. He doesn't like trans women, so sure, she's got a prepared monologue about that. He doesn't like journalists and thinks that they're, weird sex pests, I guess, so sure, she can be that too. But he also doesn't like divorce, and he didn't bother writing a character who might have some strong opinions on divorce, and so she also has a prepared statistical monologue on that, apparently. A decent writer might be able to weave these character traits into an interesting and layered character, and make them pretty funny, I would think. But nobody at the Daily Wire is one of those. And so we get, they're not really plot devices. Every actor, I guess, in this movie is just kind of like a political hot take delivery mechanism. It's also particularly funny that they use BDSM reporter lady for just a shitload of sexist jokes. Because it really undermines their whole line that they hate the transes because they love women so much narrative. More on that later, I guess. A couple other examples include Ben Shapiro playing a referee whose initial response to trans women in sports is, I really don't care.
Guys, I'm getting paid like $50 to be here. I don't care.
And then literally 60 seconds later, he calls the opposing coach a transphobe.
Technical, and you shut the up, transphobic motherfucker!
Like, as if that wasn't bad enough, Matt Walsh, throughout this entire movie, plays, like I said, that the hippie, gender non-conforming, I guess technically not a trans woman, but like I think they're like kind of leaning into that imagery. Oh my god, they totally did that because Matt Walsh is too insecure to play an actual trans woman, because like it would have driven their point home a little bit more. That's the only reason that makes any amount of sense. And then at the end of the movie, it's revealed that nothing that he did was genuine and it was all an act, and he was actually the real Matt Walsh, which I guess means by the logic of the Daily Wire that Matt Walsh is a child abuser. And in the movie.
They're not real girls!
Another Sweet Daddy Walsh adventure comes to a satisfying conclusion.
This is made infinitely funnier by the fact that Matt Walsh defended the movie by saying that almost anyone can be a serviceable actor. Like he is humiliatingly terrible at this. So I believe that almost anyone can be a serviceable actor, but that just kind of means that you're on the low end of the bell curve, I guess. But I guess that is something that I probably need to touch on sooner rather than later. This movie is incredibly fucking creepy. And to preface this section of the video, I should probably remind everybody that the Daily Wire is quite famous for their repeated insistence that the concept of cross-dressing in front of children is inherently fetishistic and child abuse. I've done videos on this in the past, but I would argue this is a pretty representative clip of their opinion.
Family-friendly drag shows, quote-unquote, have two purposes. One, from the drag queen's perspective, is to satisfy their fetish for cross-dressing in front of children.
Lady Ballers is also rated TV-14 and is accompanied by no extra warnings by the Daily Wire, so I think that we can safely assume that they think that it is appropriate to show to minors. So you can imagine my surprise when at the 10-minute mark, a 40-some-year-old man has an extended conversation with an elementary school girl about penises.
Oh, and Mary Margaret showed me her penis.
Some boy showed you his penis?
What? No, not a boy, Daddy. Gross. Mary Margaret, she's a girl.
Girls don't have penises, Winnie.
Mary Margaret does. Penises are weird.
Can we stop saying penis, please?
So the same guys that tell you that it's child abuse to tell your kid that it's okay to be gay or to examine their identity are the same guys who put this in their movie. And at this point, like, I have to ask you, why? Like, you didn't have to do this. Like, Jeremy, you could have made a movie about trans issues without having an actual conversation with a real human child actor about topics that you yourself have claimed are abusive to tell to children. All you're suggesting to us is that you're like BDSM reporter lady when she's not a vessel for talking points about divorce, in that you're willing to say whatever to achieve a political end and you don't actually care about like the harm that you do along the way. Which I guess is kind of an apt metaphor.
Pansexual is a whole different category, but really, you only need a crap ton of drugs or complicated surgery every 7 or 8 months if your body dysmorphic.
And while we're on the topic, here's just a kind of a barrage of things that apparently the Daily Wire does think it is appropriate to show to 14-year-olds.
Because we have two gently used love wagons, and one of us is more than happy to give you the ride of a lifetime.
And don't forget about Jeremy's shampoo.
And conditioner.
You want to grab some avocado toast and tie me to the furnace again? I think the blisters are starting to heal from last time.
When was the last time you got laid? We're in.
I'd cut my dick off for you, Coach.
You're a winner now. Every woman wants a winner.
You literally just called me a cheating lowlife.
Cool. One. Now put your tongue down my throat.
I just had no idea men could be so handsy. Really makes you think about how you treat women. Thanks, babe.
So are we or aren't we cutting our dicks off?
Y'all know girls don't have sex with each other at sleepovers, right?
Wait, what? Here's to you, bud. Probably the least sexy elite female athlete of all time.
One conceivable objection that I can imagine someone having to this is, well, but Malachi, they're doing this as satire. Like, they're not presenting it for real to children. It's all presented as a joke. Which, first of all, I would say to you, imaginary Daily Wire stooge that I've invented in my head, what did the humping badger joke that they called back to a billion times have to do with biting satire? And on top of that, what do you think, what is your actual objection to drag then? Because if you think that it's fetish content, it doesn't matter whether it's being shown for satire. You don't show your children pornographic anti-porn PSAs. If you actually believe that this is graphic sex content, then the intent behind it literally just doesn't matter. In season 2 of The Boys, Homelander has a graphic sex scene with a Nazi, which is a very obvious allegory for the fact that the modern political conservative movement is in bed with neo-Nazis. It's a great show. But I would be apprehensive about showing it to children on TikTok. What this really goes to show, I think, is that these people have no real beliefs. None of this matters to them. They will decry something as evil and degenerate, and then they will do the exact same thing but conservatively and claim that it's good, because none of it matters. None of it means anything. They have no emotional connection to this. They're not invested in how the world turns out. They're just plain bad people motivated by money and maybe vague disgust. So now is as good a time as any, I think, to ask ourselves, why is this movie like this? Why, when I watch The Velocipaster, am I filled with glee, but then when I watch this movie, I feel nothing? Being an active conservative in the arts is a difficult job, to be sure, because almost nothing that anyone likes is conservative in nature. From their inception, most of the franchises that you love, Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Marvel Comics, most war films are progressive in their nature. Because that's just kind of what art is. It's an expression of the ideas that human beings have about the world, our feelings about shaping the world in the direction that we think it should be. And very, very rarely is that direction less tolerant and more repressive. There definitely is art that has conservative themes that is good. I think the most blatant, obvious example of that would be The Lion King. But even then, when you watch that film, it's very clear that, one, it's not intentional, and two, it's very much the exception rather than the rule. Most of the time when you get conservative art, you end up with 2025, the world enslaved by a virus. But even that's fun, right? Like, the cover blurb is a work of art on its own. And I think the reason for that is that 2025 is probably an honest expression of conservative beliefs. I genuinely think that some of the people involved in that movie probably do think that Christianity is on the verge of being outlawed. But the Daily Wire doesn't believe any of that. They don't believe any of this. In my opinion, that is the most likely reason why this movie sucks as bad as it is. Because it's just 2 hours of these guys lying to a screen and vague badger sex jokes. And where's the fun in that? Lady Ballers, it seems, was originally suggested as a documentary where basically they would try to do the actual plot of the movie in real life. Some guys would try and enter themselves into a women's sports competition based off of self-ID, and then they would win a bunch of sports, and they would prove the whole model, the whole mission of transgenderism as evil, which is silly in and of itself. It wouldn't have been a very good documentary, but it would have at least been interesting. But they physically couldn't do that. When they tried to enter themselves into these competitions, they were turned down for not undergoing the proper hormone treatments for the appropriate length of time. These committed conservatives, desperate to make a biting political point about our current landscape, were not committed enough to inject their bodies with the hormones necessary to actually enter themselves into a women's sports competition, despite the fact that they claim that men around the world are doing this in droves. Here is Ben Shapiro openly admitting this in stunning 4K.
Now, to be fair, I think I'd actually suggested to the Crane Boys that they do this as a doc.
Yes.
I originally went to them and I said, you guys should go try out for a bunch of ladies' leagues. And that became not possible because, as it turns out, most ladies' leagues don't allow in actual men. And they weren't willing to go the full distance in terms of what it would require in order to, the actual hormone treatments and everything to play in some of the ladies' leagues. But in any case, it turned into this.
I will admit, it is a genuinely baller move to admit that the entire premise of your biting comedy film is fake. I was a huge fan of that one interview that Greta Gerwig did, where she basically just said, feminism is a lie, the patriarchy is fake, and all of that stuff. Here, I'll show you a clip of it here. I'm just kidding, of course, that interview doesn't exist, because presumably at least some of the people behind Barbie actually had beliefs. Lady Ballers isn't bad because it's offensive. 2007's Superbad is offensive. It has plenty of jokes that I have a problem with, and that if I were able to make decisions on that film, go back and, revise some things, that I would change about it. It's also fucking hilarious. No, when you strip it all down to its bare bones, the Daily Wire created their streaming service in an effort to push back against the perceived degeneracy of Disney and woke Hollywood in general, but because none of the people involved in these projects have a creative bone in their collective bodies, the best that they can do is try to desperately mimic all of the movies that they claim to hate. So, you know, their movie is full of pointless, meaningless cameos. They named their streaming service Daily Wire Plus. Their children's streaming service is full of ripoffs of Bluey and Mr. Rogers.
Oh yeah, this movie also has a pointless cameo post-credit scene.
It's soulless anti-art made by people who fundamentally hate happiness. When I was watching it, I had a bunch of other points that I was gonna come back and make. I know that there are parts of this script that I just like forgot about. Like I was going to write them and then I just didn't. But I do not have it in me to go and rewatch this film for for the insight to remember what it was that I was coming up with. So you are just left with this kind of a mess of a video. But this is a bad movie. Like, don't watch it. It's basically ruined any hope that I had of like Daily Wire movies being funny bad and not just like soulless Lion King 2019 bad. With the added dose of bigotry there, really rounding it out, honestly. Like, it's not the biggest issue that I have with this film. It's the biggest issue I have with the people behind it. But the film itself is just like so painfully incompetent that like it's the hate that is present in it is almost quaint. Also, I guess I said that I would come back to the whole sexism angle. So I guess I'll just tell you, there's this bit towards the end of the movie where I think it's meant to be the thesis statement, I guess. And it starts with the daughter of Weird Freak making this whole list of things that men are better at than women.
They're better at basketball.
Okay, yeah, basketball.
And swimming.
Okay.
MMA.
That goes without saying.
And running, and javelin, powerlifting, shot put, hockey, karate, football, pole vault, driving, parking, most of the STEM fields, rock and roll, opening pickle jars.
Okay. Yeah, boys are better at all of those things.
And rather than challenge these assertions, tell his daughter that men and women are equal or anything like that, he tries to come up with a list of things that women are better at than men, and comically, he can only really come up with 3 different things.
Women are better at all kinds of things. They can be nurturing and sensitive and empathetic, better at doing lots of things at once and caring for a lot of people at once. They're better at communicating and building community and they civilized men. Plus, Mommy brought you into the world. That's a superpower no man will ever have.
Like, sure, men are smarter and stronger and better at music, but women are nice and they can have babies, so that pretty much rounds it out, right? Equality achieved. Anyhow, you should like and subscribe. I appreciate you sticking around for this whole mess. We are getting close to 1,000 people following this account, and quite frankly, that is, well, I guess I won't say it's like necessarily shocking. Like, I figure, okay, you stick around long enough, like eventually that's a manageable number. The fact that it's happened this fast and over this course of this short of a length of time is genuinely wild to me. I have some more interesting and more like thoughtful stuff. I almost said thought-provoking, but I don't want to be presumptive about the quality of my analysis. But at least it's thoughtful from my perspective stuff in the works. And, you know, this was a good year for this channel, even though most of the year wasn't me uploading. So I will see y'all next year. Although I guess the majority of the views that this video is going to get are going to be presumably next year. So, yeah, really, I'm just discovering the concept of putting out a video at a time and then that time passing.